Heavy D and the Boyz. Yeah, we gotta talk about the Boyz because vitamin D3 doesn't work alone. It works in a synergy with K2 and magnesium. Without that interplay, you got nothing. You know, when we look at vitamin D, we look at its function in our immune function, with our muscle growth, bone density, cardiovascular health, mood regulator, calcium absorption, the list goes on. So we have a real important episode today. Might not seem so. The title is kind of, regular. You've probably seen a bunch of stuff on vitamin D before. But we're going to go a little bit into the weeds because you need to know this. You need to know how important it is. And we need to get it checked in our blood work. Welcome to another Visser podcast. Let's get going. Okay, so vitamin D3. I'm going to pull it all together, but I'm going to start one by one. Let's start with vitamin D, specifically D3. Now you also have D2, more plant, that's a plant-based, but D3 really is what we need. It's commonly absorbed in the skin from sunlight, except there's an issue there, okay? First of all, we don't spend that much time in the sun. Someone that lives in a seasonal place, or you live above 37 degrees, you live in Canada, wherever, you're not going to have enough sun. You live in Europe, you're not going to have enough sun. What ethnicity do you have? How's your melatonin? Are you more dark-skinned? This also makes a difference. Okay, that's like a protection of the sun, so you're going to absorb less vitamin D. Yeah, dark people absorb less vitamin D. Are you fair-skinned, living in a hot country? Or a country that's has an average temperature of 30 degrees where the sun shines every day, like Aruba, where I'm from. Well, if you're light-skinned, you might think, okay, cool, I can go in the sun. Well, you can't, because you're going to get skin cancer. If you look at the islands and you look at these countries that are in that belt around the equator, serious amount of skin cancer with people with fair skin. So you're going to need to supplement, bottom line. All right? I mean, the sun is great. It's there, but you want to protect your skin. You want to, as soon as you put on any type of covering, as soon as you put on sunscreen, that D is not going to translate that well. Okay, so let's quickly look at the pathways of D3. So if we look at skin synthesis, we got UVB radiation from sunlight, converts 7-dihydrocholesterol in the skin to pre-vitamin D3, all right, which is then converted to vitamin D3, which is called cholecalciferol. Vitamin D3 is hydroxylated in the liver to form 25-hydroxy vitamin D, main circulating form of vitamin D. Okay, that's produced in the liver. In the kidneys, we got kidney activation. So we got liver conversion, and then we have kidney activation. The 25D is further hydroxylated in the kidneys to form the active form of 1,2,5-dihydroxy vitamin D, which is also known as calcitriol, and that's the steroid. So then in the kidney, it gets converted to the steroid we need. Why do we need this steroid? The steroid is so important, actually activating our DNA inside our intestines, okay? To be able to attract calcium, to pull calcium out of our food, to pull calcium out of our gut, into our bloodstream, into our system. And so this is vitamin D. It pulls this calcium in. That's one of the things it does, calcium utilization. Bone health, it activates osteocalcin, a protein that binds calcium to the bone matrix, enhancing, of course, the bone mineralization, getting bones strong. Cardiovascular health is activated matrix GLA protein, MGP, which inhibits vascular calcification and maintains arterial flexibility. This is where all of a sudden K2 comes into play. So I'm going to show you the pathway real quick on the screen. And then I'm going to tell you where K2 comes into play. K2 is needed. This is the first part of the synergy that comes in. K2 is obtained from fermented foods, dairy products, animal products. And basically what we want to do is the MK7 version if we're taking supplementation. The conversion is vitamin K2 activates proteins involved in calcium binding and regulating, such as osteocalcin and MGP, through a process called carboxylation. So what it does, the K2 actually pulls this calcium out of our bloodstream, out of our arteries, into the areas that it needs to go. The muscle, the bone, the nervous system, etc. So where the calcium is needed. This K2 is that pusher. Otherwise, we have a chance that the calcium stays in and we start getting hardening and issues with our arteries and our cardiovascular health. So K2 is the key. K2 is the key. It pulls that calcium to where it needs to go. Vitamin D3 pulls in calcium. All right? And it pulls in calcium in its steroid form. This is its active form once it's converted to steroid. So you want D3. All right? So when you're supplementing, you want D3. And I'm going to go over what those values need to be. You also want to do a blood test to check your D3, to check your vitamin D. I went in, did a complete physical body analysis. They even did they did an imaging of my heart with contrast material. Perfect. Everything came out like unbelievably good, except one thing. My vitamin D was low. I'm from the Caribbean. The last thing I'm thinking about, right, in my logical mind, not in my scientific mind, but in my logical mind, which sometimes takes over, and it's not, the correct mindset. I'm from the Caribbean. I don't need D. I had enough D. Look at me. I was lacking D, which is huge, which is massive. So I had to pull up my D. I'm doing 3,000 international units a day, minimum of D, and then K2 and magnesium, which we'll talk about. Okay, so K2. K2 pulls that, pulls the calcium into where it needs to go. Okay, it's the pump. Okay, so now that we know this kind of synergy and what's happening, there's a couple of things that can throw this off. One, we got fatty liver disease, NASH. Two, your kidneys aren't working right. Because remember, these are the two organs that kind of convert our D3 into the steroid, into the active form. So that could be a problem. So we really need to look at look at our body, get our lab test, see what's going on, make sure we're healthy, and get rid of visceral fat, get rid of the fat around the liver to be able to, use this vitamin D in a correct fashion. Let's look at what the requirements are. So specifically, we're looking at 1,000 to 4,000 international units a day. I tend to believe we need to be higher up. 3,000 is fine, international units a day. 100 to 200 micrograms of K2, and that needs to be every day because you need that to be able to basically get the calcium of the bloodstream. So that's right there, it's critical. And some people might say, vitamin D is fat soluble, you can overdose. Well, the overdoses that they're looking at are 100,000 international units and above. So don't worry about it. It's not going to happen. You do have to do a blood test to see where your vitamin D levels are at, so that if you actually urgently need this or you're just going to do it as a maintenance. But you need to get that first check on it. Okay, I wanted to go over one more time the function of the hormone calcitriol. Okay, just so we have that solid. Really, it's there to have a calcium phosphate homeostasis, but it extends to other systems. Intestinal absorption. Calcitriol increases the absorption of calcium and phosphate from the intestines. It stimulates the production of calcium binding proteins that facilitate the transport of calcium across the intestinal cell membranes. Bone resorption is another one. In case of low blood circulation calcium levels, Calcitriol works with the parathyroid hormone to increase the release of calcium from bones into the bloodstream, maintaining adequate levels of calcium in the blood. Renal reabsorption. Calcitriol enhances the reabsorption of calcium and phosphate in the kidneys, reducing their excretion in urine. Bone health, mineralization, immune system modulation, innate immunity and adaptive immunity. So vitamin D, the hormone, is just critical for our immune system. Okay, it enhances the pathogen-finding effects of monocytes and macrophages, increasing the production of antimicrobial peptides like catholicidins. Adaptive immunity, it modulates the activity of T and B lymphocytes, potentially reducing the risk of autoimmune disease by preventing excessive immune exposure. Cell differentiation and proliferation, cancer prevention. Calcitriol has been shown to regulate cell growth and differentiation, which may reduce the risk of certain cancers by inhibiting the proliferation of malignant cells and promoting their differentiation into normal cells. Cardiovascular health. Calcitriol may help regulate blood pressure by influencing the renin-angiotensin system, which controls blood vessel constriction and fluid balance. Cardiovascular protection. It has anti-inflammatory effects and may help prevent arterial calcification, contributing to overall cardiovascular health. I'll have a list included where it all affects, what are the receptors, and where it gets affected. So it's massive already. Now we include magnesium. And we need to include magnesium because magnesium has a critical interplay here. So magnesium, the hydroxylation process that takes place in the liver and the kidneys, needs specific magnesium enzymes. What does this mean? It means that the enzyme 25-hydroxylase in the liver, okay, which converts vitamin D3 to 25-hydroxyvitamin D, basically can only do this with magnesium. So it needs magnesium to perform. Once we have the 25-hydroxyvitamin D3, goes to the kidneys, and the kidneys then will change that to 1,25-hydroxylase, which is actually the steroid. Here, also, magnesium is needed for the conversion. So magnesium plays a critical role in the conversion of D3 in the liver and in the kidneys to get it to its active form, okay, which is the steroid. So magnesium is absolutely, unequivocally necessary for that conversion to the steroid. So there you have the interplay. You have the interplay of all three of these components. On magnesium, we need about 400 milligrams above daily. And it's to support that conversion. With the K2, remember, so in short, what do we have here? We got D3, which is critical. Okay, we need to supplement, comes from the sun, comes a little bit from our food. Our intestines is where kind of we uptake calcium. So one of the purposes of D3 is actually to uptake calcium into our body. Now, D3 will convert to its active form, which is a steroid, okay, with the help of magnesium. K2 is there so that when this calcium comes into the bloodstream, when it gets pulled into the bloodstream by the steroid form of D3, it doesn't stay there, and it gets transported to the bones, the hearts, the muscles, wherever is needed, wherever the calcium is needed. That's the job of K2. Magnesium, on the other hand, is needed for that conversion, that enzyme that converts, your D3 to the active form, liver, and then in the kidneys to the steroid. That steroid version of our D3, or D3 that's a steroid, that activates on a genetic level, all right, in our intestines, this pathway to basically put more calcium receptors on the edge of our intestines to absorb more calcium into the body and to be able to transport it out into the bloodstream. So that's kind of the mechanism. And what it does for us, we went over plentitude, our mood, bone density, muscle, our cardiovascular system. List goes on. So it seems like a whatever vitamin, super important, but it's the three. It's heavy D and the boys. It's not just heavy D. See you next time. Subscribe, ring the bell notification, invite your friends. We're going to go and we're going to get to the bottom of everything. We're going to get you to the best health you've ever known. So join me on the Visser Podcast. Welcome.